Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our meeting. Ms. Debbie, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Hannigan?
Here.
Mr. Derman?
Here.
Mr. Loop?
Here.
Mr. Harrell?
Here.
Mr. Nation?
Here.
Mr. Jeter? Mrs. Seeley? Ms. Strucker?
Here.
Mr. Betancourt?
Here.
Mr. Womack? Mr. Hersey?
Here.
Mrs. Mullet? Mr. Kuzan?
Here.
Mrs. Belisario? And Mrs. Heinz.
Here. Thank you so much. Would everyone please rise for the invocation and pledge led by Mr. Hennigan?
And bow your head. Eternal God, bless all schools, especially St. Tammany Parish schools, that they may be lively centers for sound learning, new discovery, and the pursuit of wisdom, and grant that those who learn may find you to be the source of all truth. In this we pray. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hennigan. I'd like to welcome everyone to our February 1st, 2018 Committee as a whole for Human Resources and Education. We did not have anyone sign up to speak on the agenda, so we'll move on to our first item, which is approval of the minutes from our meeting held on January 4th, 2018. Do I have a motion to accept those minutes? I have a motion by Mr. Kuzan. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Loop. Do we have any comments from the board? Any comments from the public? All those in favor of the motion to accept the minutes, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain? So ordered. We'll move on to our agenda item. The first one is Human Resources, and Mr. Jabbia is going to give us a report on revisions to food service job descriptions. Mr. Jabbia.
Thank you, Ms. Heinz. Good evening, board members. In your packet are some job descriptions. You'll see one copy is with all the edits, and the next copy is the cleaned up version of that job description. We're trying to update the job descriptions for 3 school-based school food service positions, manager A and B, assistant manager A and B, and technician. No changes that we've added or deleted regarding duties performed. We updated some language and we clearly defined some of the duties. The only significant change is adding a required pre-employment training for the technician. The training will emphasize food safety and food production. Current applicants will not be charged for the training. New applicants will pay a $20 fee. And we have training in our various different programs, special ed, paraprofessionals for one, and they all go through a training and they pay for that training. The training is going to be done by our school food service department, and it will be a number of opportunities offered to all of those people wishing to apply for that. We think it's going to be very valuable. So that you know, right now we have 406 active applications for our school food service. We're going to notify all of those by regular mail and email, let them know of the change. We're going to give them some time to get that training done. They'll get their training done somewhere between February the 8th and April the 30th. And once they have that training done, then they'll be eligible for hire. During this period of time, we're going to freeze the applications for school food service technicians so that we don't have any backlog and make sure everybody's trained. And then the new applicants, as they come on board, they will go through the training first before they actually fill out the application. Part of the training is online and part of it is done by our school food service staff. We have 411 employees who are eligible to sub in the school food service department, so we think that's going to help us cover during this period of where we have the freeze on the application. So we're asking for approval of these job descriptions. Ms. Ferris is here in case you have any other questions.
Thank you, Mr. Jabbia. Mr. Kuzan?
What training do the food service people go through now?
before they make an application?
They don't have any. So we try to find somebody who has experience with food service, but that's not always possible. So a lot of it is on-the-job training.
Thank you.
Mr. Betancourt, would you like to make the motion to accept this, and then we'll have further discussion? All right, we have a motion to accept the job descriptions. So, yes, we have a second from Mr. Nation. Do we have questions from board members? All right, Mr. Betancourt.
Oh, thank you. Mr. Jobby, on the third one, the technician, it's just a little intriguing here. It says one of the qualifications, minimum, number 3, ability to read, write, and comprehend at a 5th grade level. I mean, how do you determine that?
But I actually consulted with curriculum and instruction, and I said, this is a recipe. They need to be able to read it and follow it, and read what we call a material safety data sheet, and read it and comprehend it, and that's why we stayed with the 5th grade level.
Okay. And then, line 5, do you have English crossed out? Is there a particular reason for that?
Not in particular, just so they can communicate effectively. That's all we need.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions from other board members? All right, the motion on the floor is to accept the revisions to the job descriptions for School Food Services Manager A and B, School Food Services Assistant Manager A and B, and School Food Services Technician. So do we have any comments from the public on that motion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstained? So ordered.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jabia. Now we'll move on to instruction. And our first report this evening is on the string program, and we have Ms. Hanson to give us that report.
I would like to share with you an exceptional music enrichment program that is offered to all K-12 students in St. Tammany Parish Public Schools. Students can elect to participate in the Suzuki Strings method, taking lessons at their school, learning the violin, the viola, or possibly the cello. Let's take a look at the program. The Strings Enrichment Program, students elect to take this program by signing up at the beginning of the school year every year with parent permission. The strings teachers then develop their schedules based on the number of students enrolled to accommodate the students at the many different schools. In grades K through 3, as you see, they meet once a week, and a parent must be present. I'll give you a little bit more information about the rationale for that a little bit later. In grades, the middle school grades 4 through 6, it's offered once a week, also for 30 minutes, and it's done through a pull-out. And students also receive orchestral training. Our 7th and 8th grade students also meet once a week, and it is done as a pull-out, but it may also be offered as a not a Carnegie credit course, but a music elective if there's sufficient numbers at the junior high to warrant having a full elective class for students who are taking the strings courses. They are also receiving orchestral training. As for our high school students, it's offered as a course for many students, if there's enough sufficient number of students who elect to take that as a music elective. But if there isn't enough students to take it as a course, it's offered before and after school. And they also are trained and perform in orchestras. Through the Strings program, students get to participate to show off their skills and develop their skills and perform in front of their peers and in the community. They can perform at many of the school events. They can perform at community events like Veterans Day program, African American Month programs, Christmas. Many of them go to the nursing homes and perform. Students in grades 7 through 12 participate in orchestra concerts in the fall and in the spring. Master classes by professional violinists are also offered to our older students. Next week, we will have an opportunity to hear a group performance of several of our middle school students performing at the atrium at 6 p.m. prior to the board meeting. Let's look at the numbers because the numbers say a lot. We have 9 instrumental strings teachers throughout the parish. The instrumental strings lessons are currently taught at 50 schools. It's offered to all public school students from grades K through 12. The students learn to play the violin and then may progress to the viola or the cello. If you look at the numbers of students at each grade level, in K through 3 we have 507 students in that particular grade level. 4 through 6 we have 505 students. 7 through 8, 64, 9 through 12, 33, for a grand total of 1,109 students who are enrolled in a strings program in St. Tammany Parish Public Schools. The Suzuki method is a method that was developed by Shinichi Suzuki, who is a Japanese educator and musician. And he believed that students need to learn how to play an instrument in much the same way that they learn how to language acquisition. So these are the tenets of his particular program. First of all, there's parent involvement. As I said earlier, in the K through 3 classes, the student, grandparent, parent, or relative must be present. And the purpose for that is so that the parent that is there can learn along with the student the techniques and the muscle coordination, the mental process that is necessary so that they can practice and actually serve as a home teacher throughout the week until the following week's lesson. Just as learning anything new, an early beginning helps the student. It helps them to pick up on that very difficult muscle coordination and mental process. Listening. Suzuki believed that a student can pick up learning an instrument by listening, in much the same way we learn to acquire our language by listening. So they first start off by playing the instrument through listening rather than learning how to read the music. That comes later as they've developed those skills necessary to play a strings instrument. And of course, with anything that you want to try to master, the repetition of a lesson helps the student to focus on that mental process, which is very difficult, and the muscle coordination in order to be able to hold the violin, hold the bow properly, and then play the instrument. Encouragement. As with any learning, students need praise while they are learning, especially in those early years when it may sound a little bit raw. It helps the students to give them their encouragement. Group learning is another major tenet and principle of the Suzuki method. The students learn by listening to the other students as well as giving feedback to the other students. And a graded repertoire. This basically means that the students learn and perform at a very introductory level. You may hear very early Suzuki strings players learning Twinkle Twinkle Little Star or variations of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star in order, again, to pick up that mental process, the muscle coordination, so that they later can develop and learn how to actually read music. And lastly, we have the delayed reading. As I said before, the major focus is on that muscle coordination and mental process. Once they're able to really handle that type of skill well, then they move on to learning more complex material and learning how to read music. Let's take a look at a video put together by Channel 13, which shows strings lessons in action. Highlighted in the film is Miss Bobby Calix and a group of her students from Lake Harbor Middle School and Fontainebleau Junior High.
1, 2, here we go.
More than 50 years ago, Japanese violinist Shinichi Suzuki realized that children learn to speak their native language with ease. So he began to apply the basic principles of language acquisition
Perfect. That's all I needed.
to the learning of music.
Their mind is working 100% all the time. They have their eyes, their ears, they're touching things, they're doing things. They're having to coordinate a lot. And this brings in math, science, history, all in one instrument.
Students across our school district learn to play the violin and other stringed instruments through the Suzuki method starting at a very young age and continue into middle school and junior high.
Rest. Rest. When we start in the elementary school, we start with very short, simple songs, simply by listening to a recording. Then when they move on to middle school, then we get to where we're reading music on the 5 lines and 4 spaces, like music has always been written. Then when they go to the junior high, they're actually in more of an orchestra setting. So we have parts. We have a first violin part, second violin part, viola, cello. So they actually are hearing different parts of music going on at the same time. That's more advanced. And so once they reach that level at 7th grade, then they would go on to high school and play more advanced music.
In addition to instilling a love of music, the Suzuki approach puts emphasis on character development, something that Ms. Calix is proud to have been a part of for more than 25 years.
For St. Tammany Parish to have a string program that is this vast, we've been going since 1991, is absolutely incredible. So I am thrilled to death to be here and have the string program going, and we work very hard with the kids. We send them to festivals and we earn ribbons. So it makes the parish, I think, whole as a fine arts district. Good job, very good job.
Rhett Sharp, Channel 13.
Tonight I have with me Ms. Bobby Calix, and I would like to thank her for opening up her strings classes to us and also for being here tonight. Next week, as I said earlier, we will have another strings teacher, Miss Annie Bridges, and her students perform in the atrium at 6 p.m. prior to the board meeting. I know you'll be excited to see what the students have learned and are continuing to learn. As Fine Arts Supervisor, and on behalf of all who benefit from this program, I would like to thank the board, Superintendent Foles, Associate Superintendent Jabia, Assistant Superintendent Sanford, and Assistant Superintendent Kosei for your continued support for this special music enrichment program. Studies continue to link learning a musical instrument to higher academic achievement. So while this program enriches the students' fine arts experience in St. Tammany Parish Public Schools, it also helps to increase their academic achievement. Thank you. Ms. Calix and I are available for questions.
Do any of our board members have questions? Ms. Belisario?
Thank you. Is there a fee, and also how do the children have to provide their own instrument?
There's no fee for any of the children to take these lessons. The instruments are a little bit of a tricky thing to do. That's up to the parent to obtain one. So they have to either rent, buy, or borrow one. Mm-hmm.
And we do have a supply for students to borrow throughout the district.
Thank you. And I wasn't sure if our queue was working because, we're switching to board docs, and I wasn't sure, but it apparently is. So our next question is from Mr. Nation.
Thank you, Mrs. Hines, and thank you, ladies. I do agree about your comment that about strings programs, because with music programs, brass, and that's what usually gets all the emphasis. And there's in most public school systems, there's virtually there's not a non-existent strings program. How long have we been doing this?
1991.
So we've been doing this a long time.
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, and I notice there's a big drop-off between 6th grade and 7th grade. Is any sense of why that is?
Yeah, this is my own theory. Part of it's just their own personal development, but this is also, when they get to 7th grade, this is their first time. They're actually being put in with other groups of kids that they're not used to, they're learning new people. But it's actually their first time they get to pick something they want to learn. And it's vast. I mean, the electives are vast at the schools. And so if they've played for a long time, unless they're a true die-hard violinists or cellists, it's hard to keep them going at that point.
And our strings teachers, are we pulling those from LPO or just,
No, all of our string teachers are full-time teachers here
so they're?
hired by St. Tammany
So
Parish.
full-time?
Yes, sir.
They're full-time faculty, okay.
I'd also like to comment towards the students, the drop-off.
Right.
As Ms. Calix had said, at seventh grade, they are offered a larger variety of electives that they can choose from. But also, the strings instruments are very difficult to play. And many of the students, when they get into seventh and eighth grade, if I'm correct in saying this, the pieces are much more difficult. And so therefore, a student has to put in a lot of practice, a lot of dedication and time to continue and to continue playing and growing. So some of them, you know, by the time junior high hits and definitely high school, they've discovered other interests. And those who are, as Ms. Calix said, truly dedicated to violin, they stick with it.
And last question, are we working, when you say orchestral, you know, are we working these children into the band, the concert season of a band, or are they their own?
They are their own entity. Strings aren't part of the band unless you have a true symphony orchestra, and then we would have flutes, clarinets. I have 13 students at Fontainebleau Junior High School right now. We are trying to, probably for next year, we were trying to put together an honors orchestra where we actually had auditions to enter kids into an honors orchestra. I think it was part of the snow, having off days. We just couldn't get it going. So we, as this group, as the string teachers as a group, decided to wait until next year, because when we get this started, we have to do it right from the very beginning. We can't do it
Sure.
halfway. So we decided as a group to wait until next year to get the honors orchestra started.
Well, I think that would be a great thing. I mean, encourage us to integrate these strings with, you know, the other music students, because it benefits them as well as, I mean, it benefits each other. I mean, you know, so that they get used to, because the violin is the, you know, I mean, that's kind of the backbone of a symphonic orchestra, so.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nation. Ms. Trucker.
Coming from when I was growing up and going to school, we actually had music appreciation. So I love the fact that we have a strings course like this. I was wondering, what about piano? Do we have anything in regard to piano in our school system?
Yes, we teach keyboarding, and it's offered in junior high school and in the middle grades as well. Junior high school, some of the students can earn it for Carnegie credits for high school, and then it's also, of course, offered in the high school level, on the high school level.
Because I love the fact that, you know, we want them to be well-rounded as far as musicians, and having the strings as well as the piano keyboard, which is really the heart of all of the instruments. That is the true classical musician.
Yes.
So I do commend y'all for that. And then my question, Mr. Nation's already piggyback on that as far as the drop. It's 85% drop from 6th grade to 7th grade, and then another almost 50% drop between 8th to high school, junior high to high school. So I know there's a lot of things that we do offer that would entice them to other electives. But I do see the growth in here, and that's what another question I wanted to ask is, has this number, the total number, has it grown over the years?
As far as the total number of students,
Yes, in this strings program since 1991.
well, I've been here 14 years, and I've always had a steady stream of students. I can't account, I mean, I don't know the numbers for all the other all the teachers, but we've always had a nice big group of kids. What we would really like to do as a string teacher is we would love to see this go into the high school as a course, as an elective.
In some schools, they do have it as a course. They're able to offer it as a course. Not in all of the high school is there sufficient numbers to add, you know, to warrant it as a music elective, but in some we do. The numbers, I looked at the numbers from last year, not having been here myself in this role, and there's a slight uptick in number of students. There is a significant drop into 7th and 8th, as we saw, but at that particular time, it's more refined skill, refined music. It's not something you can easily pick up in 7th, 8th, 9th grade and just start playing.
Right. And again, there is a cognitive benefit too, because those who play instruments, usually their logic and actually their scores tying into
Higher.
are usually higher. So I think this is a wonderful program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Trucker. Mr. Hannigan.
Now, just wanted to repeat some of the things other people have said. I think this is a wonderful program, and I offer you our support. The fine arts is always something that we struggle with funding-wise, but, I hope this continues. I think it's a wonderful course. Ms. Hanson referenced the strong correlation between academic achievement and music study, and I think that's borne out. Those of us who've been on this board have as the students of the year, if you learn about them and you learn about our national merit finalists, a surprisingly large number of those children have music in their background, a strong component, and so we know it helps, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
I'd
Hannigan.
encourage parents, by the way, to encourage your children to participate in this program. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harrell.
Yes, I was wondering, could you tell me how many teachers we have? in
We
the
have
program?
9
9?
throughout the entire parish. And many of them, obviously, with that many students in the program, serve many different schools, elementary through junior high, so kindergarten through high school. So they do a phenomenal job of working with the little bitties, and then as they progress, they do an exceptional job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harrell. Mr. Womack?
I wanted to ask you, historically, the majority of schools that I've ever known anything about their music program, strings have not been integrated in with that, the learning of strings. Don't you think that, now this would be groundbreaking for St. Tammany, we're known for being groundbreaking for a lot of things, but don't you think that it would hinder string instrument players to be integrated within brass and reed instruments? And I mean, I've been playing an instrument for 55 years, trumpet,
Okay?
for a very long time. And my own granddaughter is involved in playing strings, or the violin within the St. Tammany system. But don't you think it would hinder the string instruments to be integrated within the rest of a typical band?
Well, in order to have a true symphony orchestra, we have to have strings and band instruments. And so we are hoping that when we can get the honors orchestra started, that we can integrate the strings into the band idea.
Well, I guess what I mean is in the beginning, you talked about the Japanese Suzuki.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I mean, in the learning stages, before they even learn to read music, I've always called it learning to play by ear.
Okay.
And I found that people that can play by ear actually, in a lot of cases, outperform people that can read as well, and they turn out to be better musicians.
To play by ear, to me, that's a gift from above.
Yes.
I don't have that. I have good pitch, and I can play in tune. So when we start the little kids playing without reading the music, it's just, there's a lot going on with the violin when you start to learn to play. We're concentrating on just right here. If we're right here, we can't be looking over here at the music. But I've also had students as adults that have played by ear forever, and they say, oh, I want to learn to read music. I'm thinking, great. Well, you know what? You know what they end up doing? They end up going playing by ear. Yeah, they do. Because I've been there. Because they can't, they're so used to this that they've never been exposed to the printed page that they just cannot get their mind on this page. Once they hear it, like Mozart, he was brilliant. He could hear one thing one time and go down and write it down. Well, these people that have this perfect pitch and play by ear, they're kind of the same way. Once they hear it, they don't need to look at the page. They've got it.
Well, I agree with you because, I played lead trumpet all through the high school band in Bossier City. But if I had to read half of what I produce whenever I play, and I still play a good bit, it's generally in the church environment. But if I was to see it on a manuscript, it would probably scare me to death.
It is a language of its own, that's for sure.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Womack. Mr. Betancourt?
A few years ago, several years, I attended a a presentation at Wood Lake. And
Okay.
it was amazing to see these young children move their fingers and play, you know, some simple songs. But it was just really something to see them be able to do that. So I just want to thank you and the other 8 instructors, you know, for what y'all do,
Wood
for
Lake
working
is-
with these young children especially.
Yes, Wood Lake has quite a number of students. We have 2 teachers there. One, well, it's Miss Kelly Stomp. She was our Teacher of the Year. I thought it was last year. And so she does classroom music and violin. And then Miss Annie Bridges, you're going to be hearing her students next Thursday. She is also there, and they have a ton of kids. They work very hard at it.
Now, I know also the young lady that plays the fiddle or whatever.
Is that Miss Shaw? Miss Amanda Shaw?
I know she went to school in
Yes.
St. Tammany for some period of time. Did she happen to start, do you know?
She did, and her teacher was Mr. Tom Schischler, and he retired. I call him our senior violin teacher because I got his position when he retired, but he was the one that started Amanda Shaw in the
Wow,
violin.
That's
Yes, sir.
amazing. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hanson and Ms. Gallick, for being here this evening. We appreciate your reports.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is the recruitment report. And for that, we have Ms. Dangerfield.
Superintendent Foles, Ms. Heights, and board members. Tonight, I will share recruitment information for the 2016-2017 school year. Our highlights for tonight will reflect efforts taken to increase the applicant pool as well as train future teachers. This slide reflects recruitment fairs in which the district participated. In the fall, there were 6 recruitment trips, and in the spring, there were 9. As you can see, there were many trips to recruit a variety of teachers. On our social media sites, we posted our locations so interested people would know where to find us. Here you see a snapshot from Twitter. Our Twitter account shows our recruiters in action at Southeastern as well as LSU. Our Facebook account shows Sharnetta presenting a workshop to students at Southern University at New Orleans. In-house, we participated in career fairs held at our schools. They are shown here. In addition, we participated at the North Shore Career Fair held at Southeastern. At all of these fairs, we shared and distributed information about becoming a teacher. This Twitter picture shows our recruitment team in action at the North Shore College and Career Fair held at SLU this past September. We continue to plant seeds by encouraging students to consider teaching as a profession through our Journey to Career classes at the junior and high schools. There were 6 presentations last year. The schools are listed. That brings us to now. Last year, we hired 37 minority teachers. Our 2017 Teaching Academy Conference, which is one of my favorites, our theme was #Teach STPPS, Teach St. Tammany Parish Public Schools. We had approximately 40 students who attended from 6 of our high schools. At our conference, our students attended sessions on Know Your Who, technology integration in the classroom, digital footprints, and professionalism is the key. The good thing about these sessions is that students were shared information to be used as teachers, but not only to be used as teachers, the information about knowing your who, about technology, digital footprints, and professionalism, it could be used as students in our as high school students, but as well as college students. Martha Boucher, Elementary Teacher of the Year from Abita Springs Elementary. She served as the luncheon speaker. Here you can see pictures highlighting the day. We closed out with the group picture. Here you are probably looking at many of St. Tammany's future teachers. We continue to assist in training student teachers. In the fall of 2016, we had 40 student teachers. 23 applied, and we hired 57% of those who applied. In the spring of 2017, we had 41 student teachers, 19 applied, and we hired 68% of those who applied. And of course, this year, I introduced to you earlier the 14-year-long teacher residents that you met. Remember, this is a new pilot program that we're doing in conjunction with Southeastern. This slide outlines universities and sites from last year. During the fall, we had student teachers from 9 universities who participated at 17 of our schools and 1 of our sites. In the spring, from 10 universities who participated at 17 of our schools and 1 of our sites. So, where do we go from here? Well, let's take a look as we move forward. We don't want to just recruit teachers, the best, I may add, but we want to retain them as well. And this is done through support. When we first get them in the district, we began with our new teacher induction program, which lays the foundation of being a teacher in the district. We have boost workshops, which simply means building our own superior teachers. Those are held throughout the year, and our target audience are our new teachers. We have professional development opportunities, which are held at the district level as well as at our school sites. We have our welcome reception for our minority teachers as well as expression sessions. We do site visits for our new teachers as needed. Our schools assign mentor teachers, and then communication throughout the year via emails and phone calls. And what about recruitment? We will continue with our teacher recruitment fairs. Student teachers and intern participate into training because those are key. Field experiences, speaking at our college and universities so we can get a leg up on looking who's out there before they even begin their student teaching. Attending career fairs at our local high schools and our junior highs so we can continue to plant those seeds. Speak at career orientation classes so we can form our students that teaching is a valid profession. STAR support and continue to have our STAR conference. And of course, what every student and young adult likes, continue to push information via our social media pages. That concludes my report, and I am able to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Dangerfield. You know, I'm very proud of the job we do recruiting teachers and getting out the word that education is a great field to go into. And luckily, we're able to hire the best and the brightest then for our school system and to teach our children.
Thank
so
you.
let's see what questions that board members would have. Could you cue up we'll cue up the call for speaking. Mr. Nation, you're up first.
Thank you, Mrs. Hines. Mrs. Dangerfield, or for Mr. Jabbia, what is our retention rate currently of new hires? Just a ballpark figure.
It's about 92%.
Excellent. And I know we've said before, in terms of the number of open positions, what's the ratio of applicants to not open positions, or if you don't have a ratio, what's the raw numbers for this past year, let's say?
I would say that that was about 4-to-1 applications.
Wow.
To openings that we had.
I mean, to me, that's an extremely important metric for the health and vitality of any organization, but especially of a public school system, and one that we can certainly celebrate. If we've got a 92% retention rate and a 4-to-1 application to open position rate, I mean, I don't see how it gets. I mean, I know it could get better, but I don't see. But I don't see how. I mean, that's about as good as this. I mean, that's outstanding. So anyway, thank you all.
Thank you.
Especially when you compare it to the national average and the national trend.
You want to speak to that? Do you have a sense of what the national average is?
The national average is much lower, especially when you look at the case with public school. The supply and demand definitely do not meet, so we're way ahead of the curve with that. So continue to build and continuing to plant the seeds to continue the rich legacy for St. Tammany. That's what we make sure that we want to do, going in those schools in the junior high and going into the schools in the high school, not just waiting until they get to college, but planting those seeds so we can steer them to education in college.
Right, and then give them a work environment like we do here in St. Tammany Parish.
Absolutely.
So, thank you again.
Mr. Dermott?
Thank you, Ms. Haynes. Ms. Dangerfield, I guess that's kind of what I was going to ask about, the number of, hirees, and if we track that, where they actually came from, if they actually came out of our school system as students and went on and then came back to us, or are they from other high schools or other areas? Do we have an idea or a percentage of what those hires may consist of?
Okay, ask me that one more time, please.
Okay, the number of minority hires that we currently have, are they ex-St. Tammany Parish school students? Do we know a percentage of that? Or are they from other areas that are recruited and came here to St. Tammany? I was just curious.
Sure. I don't know the exact number, but I can tell you that the percentage that are coming in the district are coming from outside of St. Tammany. Sure.
We have some students about.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I think because in the past, we talked about our retention level of, of our minority recruiting, and that they had a sense of wanting to go back home to help that school district or wherever they came from, as opposed to staying here. And I was just seeing if, with our encouragement of our own students to seek out that as a profession and have a higher and greater retention level. That was, I think we talked about that in the past, so I was just curious.
If I can elaborate a little bit, Mr. Derman, example of that would be the retention rate for minority teachers hovers around 75%. The 14 new year-long teacher residents, we have one minority student teacher, and she's a St. Tammany resident. So out of the pool of student teachers, when we went to Southeastern, we were looking for minority student teachers, and she's the only one that was in the pool of applicants that we were looking for, and she was from St. Tammany.
Well, that's good news that she's from St. Tammany, but yeah, I understand the plight that we're faced
Absolutely.
with, and it's quite a challenge. But that's I was just curious because I remember, the reports from the past that, how difficult it was to recruit these other, potential teachers from other areas, because that's where they grew up at and they wanted to go home, as opposed to, possibly coming here to St. Tammany. And I was just thinking about, growing our own teachers and making a higher emphasis on that while they're here in our schools.
Absolutely.
I was just curious.
And we do for our STAR program, when we track the data for STAR, that's the high school teaching academies, that's part of the data that we track as well.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Derman. Mr. Kuzan?
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Dangerfield, in reference to what Mike was saying, a lot of the minorities are chosen other fields now, and they're not coming in education. I know especially at some of the minority colleges, the education programs the numbers are lower in it than what it was, say, when I was in school or even 10, 15 years ago. The question I have is, the pilot program that we have with Southeastern, do we have any indication or interest in expanding that to other universities at this time?
That's a possibility, but we have not had any other universities to reach out to us as far as a partnership is concerned.
Have we reached out to any universities?
No, because it's still in the early developmental stages of the program.
Okay, thank you.
But if I can elaborate on what you said earlier, that is a true fact as far as the programs with the minority students at the colleges and universities. They have other professions to choose from, which were not the case early on. You had a lot of minorities where education was one of the few fields that they can go in, but now they have other choices. And as we continue to review our recruitment program, we continue to, look at programs that are available, because some of the colleges and universities no longer have teaching programs because the lack of interest. And recently, we were trying to determine, another location to go to, and it was out of state. And for 3 of the historically black colleges and universities that were pooling together to have a recruitment fair, there were only 21 graduates for 3 colleges and universities.
Hopefully, the program that we have in the high schools can help with that situation, as Mike had stated previously. I hope that will help. Thank you. You
Right.
guys do a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kuzan. Mr. Womack.
Norval, you pointed out that 4-to-1 ratio that we enjoy. And do you think that whether it be minority or just overall, that that's common knowledge? And do you think in any sense that to some degree it might deter our homegrown versus those that are not homegrown to pursue teaching in St. Tammany, because they know that it's more sought after as a whole, than just typically other school systems? Would you think that would have a bearing on it?
What do you mean, coming to St. Tammany to teach?
If
I
we
didn't-
have one position available and 4
Oh, you're talking
people historically apply for it, do you think that we enjoy having that kind of a ratio, that it would deter some potential teachers coming out of whatever university, and whether it's minority or non-minority, and they're applying for a job in St. Tammany because of that ratio?
Well, I can speak on behalf of myself. If I have made it up in my mind that I want to pursue something, then I am going to prepare myself and do my homework and ensure that I do the best if I am preparing for the best.
Well,
And I feel that everybody should have that mindset.
well, I hope they do.
It hasn't failed us yet.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Womack. Thank you very much, Ms.
You're
Dangerfield.
welcome.
Appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you. All right. There being no further business to come before us, I declare the meeting adjourned, and the Business Affairs meeting will start in 5 minutes.
All right, folks, we'll call this February 1st meeting of Business Affairs Administrative to order, and ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Mr. Nation.
Here.
Mr. Hannigan. Mrs. Hines. Mr. Derman.
Here.
Mr. Luke.
Here.
Mr. Harrell. Mr. Jeter.
Here.
Mrs. Sealy.
Present.
Mrs. Drucker.
Here.
Mr. Betancourt. Mr. Womack. Mr. Hersey.
Here.
Mrs. Mullet.
Present.
Mr. Kuzan. And Mrs. Belisario.
Okay, thank you. There are no persons, as the invocation and pledge were said at our previous meeting, we'll dispense with them here. There were no persons requesting time on the agenda, so we'll move to approve the minutes for our committee meeting held on January 4th. Is there a motion to approve? Mr. Womack moves, Mrs. Drucker seconds. Any corrections or additions to the minutes? Any comments or questions from the public? Not seeing any. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed by like sign. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Mr. Jabbia.
Thank you, Mr. Nation. Your monthly maintenance and custodial report was sent to you electronically. Mr. Singletary and his staff is here if you have any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Singletary? Okay, moving on.
The monthly risk management report is in your packet. Mr. Gaspard is here if you have any questions.
All right, any questions for Mr. Gaspard? Okay, moving on.
Monthly transportation report is in your packet. Mr. Alfonso, his staff is here also.
Any questions for Mr. Alfonso? All right, item D.
Okay. Item D is the Mandeville High, Madisonville Elementary construction update. I just wanted to bring you up to date and let you know where we are. Our architects are currently drawing up plans. We're going to be putting it out for bid soon. We've met with both stakeholder groups, which consisted of parents, faculty, administration, Ms. Tipton, myself, and the architect. We've come to consensus on what, also board members were involved in that too, sorry. We've come to consensus on what we think we'd like to see. We're uncertain yet about the budget and how they may turn out, so we're trying to develop alternates as we go through with the base bid and some alternates. So we're working on that. We're going to be putting it out, and as soon as those come back, we will report back to you with the full report, showing you what the plans are and what the costs will be, and hopefully everything will be in budget. So it doesn't require any action, just wanted to give you an update.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jabbie. Any questions? Mr. Durman.
Thank you, Mr. Nature. Mr. Jabbie, whenever you come back to us with that information, can you also give us the student counts again with that information that are attending those schools and, you know, the classroom numbers? I know that's going to be in that, but I just wanted to know the student count.
Total student count is what you want, Mr.
Yeah,
Durman?
for both schools.
For both schools?
Whenever you bring back that.
Yes, sir.
That information.
Sure will.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mr. Durman. Mr. Betancourt.
Thank you, Mr. Nation. Mr. Jabbia, how much available land is there around Mandeville High? Because
the scheme that we have and the plan that we're looking at is going to go in place of probably where the oldest portables are, with a multi-story complex.
And that was going to be my second question.
Yes,
Are
sir.
we thinking
Because
about?
there's just not that much land available there. We have some land across the street. I think that's called Purple Martin, behind the school, where the soccer field is, and we have some parking out there. The plan is to extend that parking because we're going to have to use the parking lot as a staging area for modulars once we demolish the existing modulars, the older modulars.
Right.
Okay?
But we just about have to build
Yes, sir.
multi-story buildings.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Betancourt. Anyone else? All right, thank you, Mr. Jabbia. Item E.
Item E, I wanted to give, we're asking for approval to change the grade configuration at Madisonville Junior High and Lancaster Elementary. Madisonville Junior High is basically landlocked with the growth there. I just visited the school. We probably would have to add 3 more teachers. They have no more place for classrooms as it is. So we're asking the board to approve Madisonville Junior High as 7th and 8th grade, and for Lancaster to make it 3 through 6, which means that the 5th grade at Lancaster would spend another year for this coming year, and they would be in the 6th grade at Lancaster. Of course, you know that we added 1 wing on the 2nd story that we're already occupying at Lancaster, and we're building out the bottom of that wing that will house another 12 classrooms. That's going to be available for next year. So space is there. We've looked at traffic. We've spoken to both principals. They're here tonight. And I thank them for coming, Ms. Welch and Ms. Welch. Patty Nelson Welch and Miss Susanna Welch from the two schools.
Are y'all related? Yeah, okay.
So we're asking for permission or recommending to the board that you agree to do a reconfiguration on the grade level at those two schools.
Okay, is there a motion to approve? All right. Mrs. Drucker makes the motion, and our president, Mrs. Mullet, seconds. All right, the floor is open for questions or comments regarding this. Let's go ahead and queue up. All right, there we are. Okay, Mrs. Drucker.
I just want to say that this is my district, and I know my constituents have been asking for this. So this is something that our schools, our parents, even outside of my district, they've been asking about because the impact. And Lancaster, with the 24 extra classrooms, a whole wing, it would definitely hold the other sixth grade class there. And then we're not moving any kids around or students around. They're just staying one more extra year at Lancaster. So it benefits all of us, and it's much needed. And I hope that the rest of my board members will support this.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Drucker. Mr. Derman.
Yes. Again, so we're moving that grade back from Madisonville, so in all.
Not from?
Madisonville Junior High back to Lancaster.
Well, it never was at Lancaster. I mean, it never was, yeah.
Well, I mean,
Sixth grade
I'm
was never.
talking about not the students, but the grade levels moving
Yes, sir.
back.
Yes, sir.
So how many students are we talking collectively in that grade level?
In the sixth grade?
That would be in the sixth grade next
It's
year.
approximately 300, Susanna Welch? 370? 370,
Okay.
340.
Okay, and are they going into 24 classrooms or 12 classrooms?
12.
Okay.
No.
The other one's already occupied.
Okay, that's what I heard Ms. Drucker say 24, so.
We
I was-
did.
The addition is 24 classrooms.
The entire addition is 24 classrooms.
Right, but that's
12
being
12
utilized for the other grades that are
12
currently
additional,
there.
12 new classrooms coming on board.
That's what I need to know. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you, Mr. Derman. Mr. Womack.
So you were saying that we'll hire 3 new teachers?
No, sir, that's not what I said. I said if I would have left the sixth grade at Madisonville Junior High, they would have needed 3 more teachers there.
Oh,
And they have no room there now.
right.
So we're moving the sixth grade away from it. So we won't be hiring teachers. We will be moving teachers from Madisonville Junior
Just moving.
to Lancaster or into their certified area throughout the parish.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Womack. Anything else from committee members? And we do want to echo Mr. Jabia's thank you, Mrs. Welch and Mrs. Welch for being here tonight and taking time out of your evening to do that. Any comments or questions from the public regarding this motion? Not seeing any? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed by like sign. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Item F.
Item F, and for the record, we need to, my error, that needs to state Lakeshore Villages property, so that when we make the recommendation, that is the correct name for the development. It's over in Lakeshore Estates of what was originally Lakeshore Estates. If you're not familiar with that, is if you're on Interstate 10, going from Slidell to New Orleans, before you cross the Twin Span, Lakeshore Villages will be on your left side. That's on the side where the Harbor Center is located, if you've been to the Harbor Center. So a little background, after Katrina, this board purchased 10 acres of land in this particular area. There's a new developer there, well-known nationwide, D.H. Horton, I believe it is. And he's a very reputable developer, and they're very aggressive in developing the area out there. And they have asked, because part of their development and what they're planning to do, their plans, the property that we have will be in a location of where they want to put like a lake or a canal, so they need us to move. So they're asking for a swap, but not an even swap. We have 10 acres. They are proposing to give us 12 acres, and it's very close to where we were. The infrastructure is the same for both pieces of property. We've had an appraiser look at it. We're definitely not going to lose any money by doing this, probably gain some. Property probably be more valuable. Also in the area of where they're proposing this swap, there's going to be a recreation area for this particular development, and schools will have access to that recreation area. So we think it's a win-win for us, and we're asking for approval for the board to do this land swap at Lakeshore Village's property.
Okay, Mr. J. All right. Mr. Hersey makes the motion to do the land swap, and I think I heard Mr. Jeter seconds. All right. Any questions or comments from committee members? All right, we'll start down here with Mr. Hennigan.
Thank you. Mr. Javia, the roads that would serve the school, does this involve building any more roads for us?
No, sir. They're building all the roads. They've actually done some traffic studies about traffic in and out for the school if we build a school there or when we build a school there. So they're working on all of that.
All right.
Plus the electricity, the water, the sewage, all of that is there.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Javia regarding this? How big is this development? Do you know? Do you have a sense of how many homes are going?
Cameron, you remember how many homes? 2,500 single homes.
Wow. Okay, very good. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Javia.
Thank you.
All right. Anything from the public before we take our vote? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed by like sign. Any abstentions? Motion carries. All right. Thank you, Mr. Javia.
Thank you.
All right. Ms. Tipton.
Thank you, Mr. Nation. We have a short construction report this evening. The school moved into the 50 wing at Fountainblue Junior High last week. The notice to proceed has been issued for the final phase, and the contractor is working on dismantling the temporary modular campus setup and starting the demolition of the 150 modular wing there. At Pearl River High School, the contractor is disconnecting utilities, removing the walkways, and prepping the temporary modular buildings to be removed from that campus also. At Lancaster Elementary, interior finishes are progressing. Work to provide for permanent electrical service to the first floor is planned for the week of Mardi Gras. Work is progressing in the gym, locker room, and restrooms, and at the new east entry area and classrooms for Slidell High. At Mayfield Elementary, the contractor is completing the exterior work at the new parking area and around the new buildings, and final inspections are being scheduled. At Mandeville Junior High, the contractor is nearing completion with the interior finishes and woodwork installation in the 100 wing. The metal stud walls are in place and the roof trusses are being installed at Pupil Appraisal Building. The interior beadboard is installed and primed throughout the Bayou Lacombe Museum, and the new sidewalk and ramp entry on the side has been built. The architect for the RISE facility has submitted a set of documents which is being reviewed by school board staff. And documents for summer projects are being finalized, and we're starting to receive quotes and advertise for bids. We have projects underway that include roofing work at Abney Elementary, Whispering Forest, Carolyn Park Elementary, Covington Elementary, Pine View Middle, Mandeville Elementary, and Mandeville Junior. And we'll start to add these projects to the monthly reporting.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Tipton. Any questions or comments from Ms. Tipton? Okay. All right, Ms. Seeley and then Mr. Bettencourt.
Thank you very much for, again, going through with this project at Pearl River High School. And I do have a question. The modulars, about how long does it take for the process of tearing the modulars, removing the modulars off the property, basically?
Yes, ma'am. The contractor's disconnecting utilities to them and is dismantling the walkway.
Okay.
And once all of that is taken out, they'll have the modular contractor come back in to remove them from the site. The weather will play into that a little bit, but they'll be gone, we expect, before the end of the semester. And it should be a fairly efficient process.
Well, the school's beautiful.
Yes, it is.
Thank you, Mrs. Seeley. Mr. Bettencourt.
All right, thank you, Mr. Nation. Ms. Tipton, I was walking around Fontainebleau Junior High late this afternoon with Ms. Grundich. She was showing me around. Those new buildings look great. But I'm curious, when you get in between, I guess it's the 300 and the 400 for the choral band building, is there any way, I mean, that building would look, just to really put the cherry on top, if we could shingle that front, because right now, at first glance, and it's the side of the other buildings, the front of the other ones are shingled, and it really sets them off. That building there, that choral building and band, that's not a whole bunch. Those 3 sections on the front of that building, and it's set back. So you don't notice it at first, but when you turn that corner and see that, if there's any way possible of getting some money, and I'll nail the shingles on for you, but it would really look nice. And I'm also wondering, I'm not familiar with that roofing, because at a first glance, it looks like roofing felt. What are those?
The roofing that is on that building is a modified bitumen roof, which is very similar, or is actually the same as, but maybe a different assembly, as we put on the low slope roofs at many of our schools, and it carries a 20-year warranty. So that's one of the reasons that it's selected to be used there. It
Okay.
has a 20-year weather tightness warranty, where some of the shingle
Well, if
products
there's any money left over somewhere for aesthetic purposes, the front of that band choral building would, like I said, would really be set off if we could shingle that like we did the front of the other wings.
We'll take it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Betancourt. Anything else for Ms. Tipton?
Yes.
Oh, all right.
What was the relevance, Cameron, to Carolyn Park a while ago? Did you say something upcoming?
We're going to be re-roofing one of the classroom wings there this summer.
Well, if there's any shingles that need to be put on, I'll do that.
Are you willing to give your roof project to Mr. Betancourt tonight?
Mr. Kuzan.
That's not a project I'm aware of at the moment.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kuzan. Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tipton. All right, Mrs. Prevost, our monthly financial report.
Yes, the December financial report's in your packets, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions for Mrs. Prevost regarding the financials? All right. Item B.
And the monthly purchasing report is in your packets, and Ms. Stevens is here to answer questions.
Any question regarding the purchasing report? Okay, not seeing any. Announcements from the president.
Thank you, Mr. Nation. There will be a special board meeting immediately following this meeting for an expulsion appeal hearing. Board members, please stay. Also, next week, the regular board meeting will be held February 8th, and it will be at 7. However, please be here for 6 for the entertainment, because we will have some wonderful entertainment by our students. And that is all, Mr. Nation.
All right, thank you, Madam President. With no further business to come before the committee, I declare the meeting adjourned.